All right, welcome back to a bonus episode of the Blasters and Blades podcast. So, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies, a place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. So, without further ado, let me tell you what we're doing right now. We're getting ready to release some of the archive that we found from when we were the sci-fi shenanigans. We're going to get those up there for the posts that were brought down. We thought you might enjoy them, and so without further ado, let us roll that beautiful. Oh wait, they're going to sue me. Play it.
Hey, all you crazy sci-fi fans. Time for your daily dose of insanity over here at the Sci-Fi Shenanigans podcast with your hosts, J.R. Handley and me, Chris Winder. Just two nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions. A place where the sky's the limit, space is the place, and nerds run the world. Without further ado.
All right, welcome back for another episode. Today we have the privilege of interviewing author MG Herron, otherwise known as Matt. We will call him Matt from now on. Is that okay with you, Matt?
Yeah,
Can we
absolutely.
call you Matt? Matt?
You can. Just you, though.
Right. Everyone else calls you MG. All right, so today we are interviewing Matt Herron, who writes science fiction and fantasy stories for adrenaline junkies. His books explore new worlds, futuristic technologies, and ancient mysteries. In addition to indie publishing novels from his home base in Austin, Texas, Matt also works as a marketing strategist for tech startups. So it sounds like you and Chris will have a lot of nerdly things to talk about when it comes to the tech stuff.
Perfect.
Oh my gosh, I can't even begin to imagine what he does.
Mostly
he out-nerded me.
Mostly he plays on Facebook, I bet.
Yeah, pretty much. That's like half my job. But thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be here.
Outstanding.
Awesome.
The second part of the introduction we do every week for our dear listeners is we mention how we found them. So for me, I actually found Matt in one of the book lovers Facebook groups. It's like a reading club, book club kind of thing. And we were talking about books that we love. In fact, let me make that as a show note. I'll find that link because I know which one it is. I just can't remember the name. But I'll find that Facebook group. Book club is added to the notes. See, the first one of the day, breaking it in early. All right. But, and so we were talking about books, and I mentioned that, we were talking about movie series we'd love to see books written in, and I mentioned Stargate because I missed the series, and he kindly pointed out that his books were kind of Stargate inspired, and so he sent me a link, and I bought all of them. I haven't had time to read them because I promised other people I would do book reviews for them, so I wanted to put that as a priority, but I bought them all, and they're at the top of the TBR list because you can't go wrong with Stargate.
That's right. Yeah, I love Stargate. It's one of my favorite franchises.
Me too. What about you, Chris? Where'd you meet the one, the only Matt?
Well, Matt and I were actually part of the science team that developed Elon Musk's Heavy Falcon rocket. And I'm really glad he was there to talk me off the ledge on that one. My idea may have been a little hasty. I was going to use a cybernetically enhanced biomechanical exoskeleton to draw a 3 million pound rubber band to launch the Tesla into orbit. So luckily Matt is smarter than me and decided that would be kind of a bad idea, maybe a little bit dangerous even.
I had to help you out because Elon was sleeping in the factory again, and he just gets really frustrated and angry, and he just didn't like your ideas, so I was trying to intervene.
Right. So, well, it was either that or I met him on Twitter and then started bugging him about his books and then stalking him like a fanboy or something. It was one of those, so I can't remember.
Well, I remember meeting you guys through the Galaxy's Edge groups, too.
Oh, that's right.
Because I read Legionnaire early when it came out, and I found the Facebook group that I think you started, right, JR?
Yep, I did.
Yeah, so that's fun.
Awesome. Well, first question is the religion question. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
This is really hard for me, but I'm going to have to go with Star Wars, probably.
Nice. Okay.
I thought for sure he was going to say, screw your religion, it's Stargate all the way.
Yeah, I mean, I do love the Stargate franchise, but I think as a kid, my first love of the three was Star Wars, and it's hard to compete with your first love.
It is.
It really is.
I've enjoyed Star Trek too, but not as much as Star Wars. And Stargate, of course. SG-1 is very close to my heart.
I agree.
What do you think of Stargate Universe?
I really liked it, and I was really sad that they canceled it after.
Yay!
Yeah, I actually wrote an article. So this was back when I first started freelance writing about the death of Stargate Universe, and my theory was it was that horrible Friday night time slot that ruined them.
Yes,
because it's a great story, but they put it on Friday night when nobody's sitting down watching TV at like 8 or 9 p.m. at night. I was like, that is the worst time slot.
Well,
you know what?
You know what else they did is they didn't, because this is when like DVR was relatively new, where people could record the shows, and so those recordings were treated like somebody actually sitting and watching it as far as counting. But when you bumped the show because of a football game or a political speech or fill in the blank whatever nonsense, every time you bumped it, your DVR didn't bump with it, so you would get less of the show, or even sometimes not the show at all, and so those would show as people not watching it, even though they wanted to watch it.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was so mad every time I'd look at my DVR and it would get something else because they moved the show. And Fox is horrible about that. They never keep anything consistent when it comes to air times.
Yes, that's true.
If you're listening to Fox, straighten up.
Yeah, that's right. They are the kiss of death. That is where good shows go to die. Don't even get me started on Terra Nova. Oh my God. The dinosaurs.
Yep. Yeah, I remember seeing a couple episodes of that show. And Stargate Universe was so interesting because, unlike the other series where they were hopping to different worlds, which I think is interesting too, they were actually stuck in the ship, and so they had to do a whole bunch of like character development and human interaction in that one. They couldn't lean on the crutch of the Stargate.
Yeah.
Right. They had to keep developing it. So, Matt, what do you love about science fiction?
What do I love about science fiction? I think the thing for me that always brings me back to it is the possibility that it could be real, like finding some interesting scientific angle that is possible and then projecting it into an imagined future. That's really the thing that keeps bringing me back.
I hope kaiju aren't real.
Me too. That would be kind of scary.
What's your first memory of watching, reading, or playing games in the genre?
Well, I've been a reader since I was really little, so it's hard to say. Like I read, all the standard fantasy books, but the thing that brought me into sci-fi was probably Final Fantasy VII. Did you guys ever play Final Fantasy?
Oh, geez.
I have.
Yeah. So number 7 came out when I was like really into RPGs when I was a kid, and it's like this cyberpunk dystopian world with they use like materia as magic, and I just love that world, the whole Final Fantasy universe, but especially Final Fantasy VII because it had that cyberpunk twist. And it was probably about the same time that the cyberpunk authors were getting big too, and that was a little bit beyond my reading level at that point, but I loved that video game, and that just pulled me in.
Okay.
Wow, yeah, I hadn't thought about that video game for a long time. What are they up to now, like 30 of them?
Yeah, something like that. They're much more realistic now, and but there's just something about that storyline of Final Fantasy VII that's just incredible.
Yeah, that one in Metroid.
I loved Metroid too.
They just kept going.
I played the hell out of Metroid Prime.
Did you ever beat it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I never did. I gave up a long time ago.
It's a good game. I love the 2D like back and forth where your like ship is stuck in the middle. So between those two games, I think that's probably like my intro to sci-fi.
Nice. So how'd you go from being a sci-fi fan to writing in it?
That was a more circuitous journey, I suppose. So I've always written, but I didn't really take writing seriously, especially fiction, until about 5 or 6 years ago. And the first thing I wrote happened to be sci-fi. I've always been a big fantasy reader, but when I sat down to write, the thing that came out was science fiction. So I didn't really get to choose that consciously. It just happened.
Oh, are you a pantser or an outliner?
I mean, I've done a little bit of both. I think I'm kind of, I always think of plotting and pantsing as like a spectrum, and I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, maybe like 60% plotting, 40% pantsing. So what I do when I start a book is I'll come up with the idea and plot it out as best as I can. And what happens is I usually get about 70%, and the ending is like good guys win, bad guys die. Right? Like that's as specific as I get. And I write as far as I know, and then I figure out the rest as I go. But I like it to be, at least if I don't have like a very specific plot, I just want to have a map so I know where I'm going.
Sure, waypoints.
Yeah, exactly. Waypoints. So, I use basic knowledge of story structure. I use like a 4X structure, and I kind of plot it out as far as I can. And then I just kind of trust my intuition and go with it.
So how long ago did your writing start?
So I moved back to Austin in 2012 to start freelancing. I was living in Europe at the time, in Germany, waiting tables and traveling. And so I decided to take writing seriously. So I came back to Austin to do that. I started freelance writing here, and at the same time started, I'd started writing short stories in college and a little bit in high school too. But in 2012, I had a couple things that just weren't finished. So I was like, I'm going to finish one of these for sure. That was my goal. I just had to finish something. So that was probably around that time where I started publishing science fiction too. I think my first short story was 2014 or something like that when I published it.
Nice.
Okay.
So who's been the largest influence on your writing?
I mean, that's hard to say. I want to say it's like the authors I read as a kid because I was just such a voracious reader. But there are definitely some teachers along the way who have encouraged me. One of my parents' friends was an author when I was a kid, and I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. She'd written some journalism and some, I think, children's books. So I just was like starstruck. I thought it was amazing. And then there were a couple of teachers that encouraged me. So a lot of people along the way. But as far as indie publishing, it was probably like the 2011, 2012 crowd where I realized that this was real. That you could actually do it.
Right.
And I set up an indie author group shortly after I came back to Austin and started writing. I met Michael Bunker and some other really awesome indie authors in town. And then it got really real for me. I was like, these aren't just like, celebrity authors. These are real people.
Right. And just so you know, JR has to add to the show notes every time you mention someone. So mention as many as you can.
I mean, I love these guys. Michael Bunker's awesome. He lives in Central Texas, a couple hours from where I live in Austin. He's a really interesting guy. He lives off grid on a farm in Central Texas. So he's a very interesting person to talk to. So he's great. My friend Steve Statham also lives in Austin. He writes science fiction, kind of space opera-y like I do. He's a great guy too. So there's 2 more for your list, just in case you didn't have enough work to do.
Outstanding. That's okay. I'll get him back, and I'll find the author to interview with has like the worst Wi-Fi connection, so the audio will be like the worst. And I'll be like, "Yeah, take that. Spend a decade editing that nonsense," because he does all the audio editing. So I know you're newly married, Matt, so I'm going to give you a little bit of advice. When someone asks who's the largest influence on your writing, you're supposed to say something loving like, "Oh, my wife, she inspires me."
She tolerates me. Let's be
All right. So one of the things I thought would be an interesting little bit of trivia is that Chris and I are co-writing a universe together, which we'll get into more when it's more ready. But one of the things when we were world building is we had to come up with who invented the FTL. And so we actually used you, Matt. Matthew Herron, Dr. PhD, invented FTL in our universe.
Nice. That's awesome. See, I'm smarter in fiction than I am in real life too.
And so we've got a I don't know what you want. 40,000. Technically, it's a novel, but most people would probably call it a novella. But we've got a story called The Mad Hatter coming out in the not too distant future that tells the creation of the FTL by Dr. Herron. But you get the girl in the end, I'm sure.
So good. Yes.
I mean, it couldn't possibly go horribly wrong, could it, Chris?
Couldn't possibly that maybe somebody tries to do something bad to their ship.
That's awesome. Immortalized in fiction. My dream has come true.
I mean, my goal is just to be killed more times than Joe Buckley, but so far he's winning. But I will catch
I've seen
up.
your name in a few books too, JR.
Yeah, I know. I've been pushing like, if you want someone to kill me.
I'm not sure he's winning anymore. I actually plan on making a poster with the little cartoon caricatures of every single way that you've been killed off in books, and people are sending them in. So I need to get busy on that.
But it doesn't count if they haven't actually published the book yet.
Right. So I'm gonna list the books that each of them are from.
Outstanding.
I think the last one I saw your name in, JR, was it Terra Nova? Not the TV show.
Terra Nova by Richard Fox and you gave me show notes and Josh Hayes.
Your name was in it. I don't know what's going to happen because I haven't finished it yet.
I didn't know I made it. I didn't know I made the cut in their book.
Well, if the whole thing is JR gets put in books to get killed, I need to go finish it now.
Yep.
I need to know what happens. How does he die? But that's cool. And for the record, guys, I'm glad to hear that you're co-writing something. I think it's a great idea. And 40,000 words and above is technically a novel. So.
I know, but most people won't consider it as such.
The awards, like the Hugo and Nebula Awards, their guidelines are 40,000 and above as a novel. So you could qualify for a novel award, I think.
I think you can.
Right.
Sure.
I have no expectations of winning awards. If people read the books, buy the books, and we can buy a couple cups of coffee off of it, that's winning.
That's it. Yep. That's the life.
So, Chris has got expensive taste, but not me.
Right. Buy a couple cups of coffee on my yacht.
See, he's got big plans for that yacht. So transitioning away from your writing style, because we try to keep this podcast focused, more towards the readers of the books rather than just, another author podcast. And those are fun. I listen to those too, but there are plenty of those out there. So transitioning from the writing side, let's talk about things from the fan angle. What is the weirdest or funniest interaction you've had with the fans since you started writing?
The weird interactions always come when you do like conferences or book signings and stuff. It's just, awkward people. I don't think I have any specific stories in mind, but it's always fun to meet people, and sometimes it can get a bit awkward.
Look, I'm sorry. It won't happen again. You said you wouldn't talk about this anymore.
They're fun though. I do love doing the events.
Okay. Let's see. So you don't have anything specific?
No, nothing really comes to mind. I'm not big enough to have like crazy super fans yet.
Okay.
Maybe one day I'll have a super fan stalker. I can look forward to that.
Oh, yeah.
So what about your work through the indie author group that you started in Texas? Any interactions that were funny with wannabe writers that aren't quite there yet, starting out?
Those are always interesting. The preconceived notions that people come to the meetings with. The reason I started the indie author group was just to learn. It was my version of a masterclass. And if I can get a whole bunch of people to present on indie publishing and the different aspects of it, maybe I'll learn how to do this thing. And so now it's 1,000 people. Wow. It's on Meetup. If you search Indie Author Society, the group in Austin alone is 1,000 people. Wow. And we put a whole bunch of videos of our talks online. So if you're interested and you're an author and you happen to be listening to it, if you go to indieauthorsociety.com, you'll find a bunch of free videos. They're just up there for people to learn. And, I just kind of did it as a thing to help others and to learn myself. And so they're just free. And we have a couple volunteers running the group still. So I don't go to every meeting now, but I go a few times a year. So it's always fun. As for awkward interactions, I think my favorite thing is the people who come to the meetings expecting that they're going to publish a book and be famous. And I always have to let them down. I'm like, well, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, or the people who ask how to get their book that has been on Amazon for years and years and years into a movie. And it's like, they'll approach you as soon as they're ready, and they get so deflated. It's so sad.
Yeah. We've had a couple talks on selling movie rights and stuff like that. And the thing is I know a couple of people who have had their books optioned, and the stories are always the same. It's like, well, it was completely random, or it was dumb luck, or my book just happened to fall into the hands of the right person at the right time, and they reached out to me. Like, there's no repeatable system. It's not like indie publishing where you're like, okay, you write a book, you get it edited, you put a good cover on it, and then you can like go through the process. When you go to sell like a film option, there's no process. Like, do you know people in Hollywood? Okay, well, you better start networking. Even the Netflix movie space, so you just have to know the right producers. So, but there are a lot of books now getting made into smaller movies. You know, not like big budget Hollywood stuff, but there's a lot of cool stuff coming out on Netflix, and you know, Netflix has done a whole bunch of great sci-fi content lately.
Well, the indie romance community has it big because the Hallmark Channel published at the end of 2017. They're like, indie authors, send us your romance novels. We're looking for more movies.
Yeah. So, sorry, I seem to have redirected us into writing again. But let's go back to the reading.
No, it's fine. So let's start talking now about Matt's book. So he's written miniseries. So we'll just list them out. He's written the Translocator series, The Republic, which is a standalone novel, several anthologies, including At the Helm 3, a sci-fi bridge anthology, In Your Closet and In Your Head, a monster anthology, and Boys and Their Monsters, a post-apocalyptic stories. He's written a nonfiction, Scrivener Superpowers, how to use cutting-edge software to energize your creative writing practices. I bet Josh Hayes put you up to that, didn't he? Him and his evil Scrivener.
No. He did not, but I love Scrivener.
Him and I go back and forth. I'm a purist. See, it's Word and Times New Roman 12. That's the way it was meant to be.
I appreciate that.
But
I appreciate that. Yeah, look.
And he's
anyway, I mean, like, as long as you get the words down, who cares?
Right. And he's written more short stories than I can count. And I thought about listing them, but I don't think you want to listen to a half hour of me reading out story titles. So you can check out his Amazon page where he has some of them. Probably most of them listed for sale, and I believe some of them are in KU, right?
Yep, all my novels are in KU and a bunch of short stories too.
So that's Kindle Unlimited, where it's a subscription base. More show notes. It's a subscription based program, and if you're a member, I think it's like $12 a month or something, and you can read unlimited. And
right. So if you read fast, it is a bargain.
And hopefully they stop screwing with authors long enough that it lasts, because the readers love it. But anyway, let's see. While those are all amazing books, today we are going to focus. Wow, speak much. Today we're going to focus on your Translocator trilogy, because that's where Chris wanted to start. I love that the series has a Stargate vibe, because I loved that TV series, all of them. How did you come up with an idea or premise for this series? I know the answer because we've talked about this, but I want you to get a chance to tell the listener where the idea for this story came from.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2014, I think it was, I went to the Mayan Riviera in Mexico for a vacation, and we got on a bus and drove inland 3 hours to see the pyramid at Chichen Itza. And after we saw that, I mean, it just blew my mind. I've always loved looking at ancient cultures and visiting ruins and trying to figure out what they were all about. But after we left Chichen Itza, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then I kept having this vision of this woman waking up on a beach where the sky was a different color. And so I combined those two things, the Mayan pyramid at Chichen Itza with what I call a translocator.
So I'm not even going to try to spell that Mayan pyramid name, but I do know that Matt has written a blog about that vacation and the adventure and how that inspired everything. So I will get that from him, and we will throw that in the show notes. It's worth reading, and he's got a bunch of cool pictures from that trip. So if you're into like travel vlogs or that kind of thing, I mean, that'd be fun just to read just because. But yeah, we'll list that in the show notes. It's a pretty interesting article about where the idea came from and the trip and all of that. So, but we are at not the half hour mark yet. Okay, so we get to keep talking. Woohoo! All right, so you've described this series to both of us as Stargate SG-1 done right. So did you mean that specific show or the franchise in general?
So Stargate SG-1 is a really good parallel. Like Stargate Universe wouldn't be as good of a parallel because they're stuck on a spaceship in that one. But in the Translocator books, they start on Earth and they go to another planet where there's an ancient culture. And that's why it's a really good analog. Not only is there like this machine that transports them places, what I call the translocator, but they also have like the interactions with the ancient cultures, a different language, different customs, and that's why I compare it to Stargate, because that's what Stargate SG-1 was all about. Exploring new worlds, meeting new cultures, and exploring the mysteries that those cultures have with them. And in the SG-1, like they always have something weird that's a little strange or a little off. I like playing with that stuff. So the culture in the Auriga Project, which is the first translocator book, is based on the Ancient Mayans. Again, Chichen Itza.
That was interesting. I have a question about one of those characters.
Absolutely.
Amon?
Yes.
Amen. Were you inspired by Elon Musk? Because he kind of seems like an eccentric genius.
Yeah, I think a little bit I was. It wasn't conscious at the time, but in hindsight, I could definitely see it. His name is Eamon Fisk, and Elon Musk, it kind of sounds the same even. I think it just has like a nice ring to it. But yeah, definitely inspired by him. Elon Musk inspires me every day with the stuff that he's doing with Tesla and SpaceX and the Hyperloop stuff that he's doing. I just think it's all incredible. So my character is a little bit based on that. He's an eccentric billionaire that created this translocator thing. And he loses his wife in it and everything goes wrong. So I think that's kind of where it diverges from Elon's life.
Well, I think if anyone's going to actually turn your science fiction into science fact, it's going to be Elon.
Yeah, slow down, Elon. Don't ruin it for me.
Right. Let the book live a little before you prove it wrong.
Seriously.
All right. So I looked at the questions we've got coming up, and those are going to get deep into his series. So I think this would be a good place to stick a pin in it and have a pause for a word from our sponsor.
When a strange symbol is found at a burned-down historical site, Houston arson investigator Emmy Aninzo goes to work. As mysterious and inexplicably hot fires break out across the drought-ravaged city, she finds herself digging through the ashes of history. It's a race against time to track down the serial arsonist and explain the seemingly impossible heat of the fires. As strange evidence begins to pile up, Emmy wonders if the arsonist is insane, or even worse, possessed. Can Emmy and her colleagues find and stop him before the entire city burns? Parsec award-winning author Paul E. Cooley wraps ancient mythology around an eerie contemporary tale that will leave you burning for more. Gar's Inferno, a free podcast novel available from shadowpublications.com and iTunes. Some mysteries shouldn't be solved.
All right, welcome back, and thank you for being patient as we try to fit this in. We try to insert the commercials in as unobtrusive a spot in the interview as possible, so we don't mess with the flow of their questions. And we're about to get to the good stuff. So, all right, so you have the Translocator trilogy. It's clearly a series because that's what trilogy means. It means 3 of them. See, I can count 1, 2, 3. Woohoo! They're going to kick me out of the infantry for that. But so what's next for these characters?
Well, so the next book, the third and final installment of the trilogy story, comes out on June 1st. So that'll kind of wrap up this arc of the story. I do have some other ideas in mind. So we may continue the series, but I haven't put pen to paper on it yet. So I'm just excited to have the third book come out and to, finally have the full trilogy up there.
Okay. So do you plan on potentially telling more stories from this same team, branching off, a la Stargate Atlantis? Oh, I did it to myself.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I really like the characters, and I think that there's an opportunity to do a more Stargate SG-1 thing where they go explore different worlds. In this trilogy that I wrote, it's like 3 parts. It's a 3-part story exploring one world and what they find there, like the mystery that they discover there, the ancient alien that they discover there, and the protagonist and the main conflict is kind of all wrapped up in one story that spreads across 3 books. That's why it's a trilogy. But I'm curious about what happens next, so I need to sit down and find out.
Okay, so we actually were talking off the record before we started, jokingly, that if we had a drinking game where someone had to do a shot, yeah, you, Logan Scott, we're talking to you. If someone did a shot every time we said show notes, they would probably be blitzed before the commercial.
I think JR tripped into the translocator. That's what happened.
But we just do that so you know that if we cite an article, we're not just blowing smoke. You can see what we saw. You can see where our ideas came from for that. And so, even if we got the answer wrong, you can see where the facts, the book we started from is. And then when we mentioned authors and books, we like to get their name out there and let people read them. So we throw those in the show notes. So please don't actually, drink and read because you might leave bad reviews.
Don't actually play this drink.
Leave the reviews
because
sober.
You will die. All right.
Cool.
Well, we're sorry if this sounds a little bit disjointed. So what had happened? It has never happened before, but we've gotten
JR broke it.
Now, just let's tell them the truth, people. So we've gotten on the radar of some big listeners. Obviously, Elon Musk is a fan. But, he's having this little trade war deal going on with Virgin Galactic. Virgin Galactic is not happy that we're fanboys. They've constantly hacked our website. It has just been brutal. Chris has been up all night waging this tech war against them. He's even enlisted the Chinese to help him. We finally brought down Virgin Galactic, but I don't know how long it's going to last. And there was talk that maybe they're going to send Skynet Live to shut us down.
In case the FBI is listening, the disclaimer is that this is all fiction.
That didn't work for H.G. Wells either when he said, I was just making it up.
Just mess with you guys. Just mess with it.
But, okay, so you just got done telling us that your book, the third book in your trilogy is coming out on June 1st, and that you weren't quite sure what you were going to do with it from there because you haven't plotted it out. So what's your thinking? Are you going to write more novels in this series, so sort of episodic releases, book 4, book 5, or branch off, more side series?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to do some side stories, but I think the main thing is continuing with the two main characters, Eamon and Eliana, beyond book 3. But that's probably the same series. I just don't know yet.
But since book 1, 2, and 3 all happen in one location, doing another trilogy that happens somewhere else, or just branching off to an open-ended series, that would work.
Yeah, so what I really love is going back to Stargate, the SG-1 model, where they explore a new world for every show. I would like to do something interesting like that, where they explore a different world with each book, a different culture, a different world. So, like we've spent three books exploring the Ancient Mayans.
Right.
So, like, what other ancient cultures can we explore? What other mysteries can we experience in this galaxy? And now that they have access to the galaxy, I mean, it's a whole different ballgame.
Outstanding. All right. So I've skimmed the reviews, and as I've mentioned in previous episodes, that sort of helps me determine what books I buy. So this is our PSA. Please be kind and speak your mind on the review function. Yes, I know. Yeah. I'm showing my age. I don't know if you guys remember going into Blockbuster as a kid and renting VHS, and they would have that sign, "Please be kind, rewind."
Yes,
that was sort of my inspiration.
Nice.
But so, skimming your reviews, I didn't actually see any that many 1-star reviews. So, good job on scaring away the 1 stars. But
I don't know how I did it. I think there's 1 star, and it's like great book. 1 star.
Yes, I saw that. I don't think they understand what the stars mean. I think he was saying number 1. But I don't know. One of the common themes was that you seem to have blended real science with humor. So how do you plan on keeping that sort of formula going, since it's what worked for you?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the way that the relationships between the characters are set up. So the comic relief in the first couple books, a lot of it comes from Ruben, who is Eamon's assistant on the translocator. And he's like, Eamon's doing shenanigans again. And he just like gives him a hard time and says, well, that's not safe. So it's like a lot of the character interactions. That's where the humor comes from. I think that's really it, and just like they're really like people I know and my own sense of humor like blended in there. So I like to think that I have a pretty good sense of humor and it comes through in the books.
Okay.
Oh, that was going to be another question. Do you draw from people you know to make characters in your books?
Yeah, I do. So for instance, Ruben again, he's he's Jewish and he uses like Yiddish slang words. And my mom's side of the family is Jewish and they use Yiddish slang words all the time. And so I've chosen my favorite ones and peppered them in there.
Nice.
Okay. So, with those continuation of these universes and these characters, what other forms of media would you like to see? Obviously, it's a new enough series that nobody's beating down your door yet for movies or video games or RPGs. But dream big. What would you love to see first? If you got to pick out of all the other forms of media that come out in your universe, what would your first desire be?
I think it would make a good TV show. And the trilogy would also make a good movie if you did like the whole thing together. But really, I mean, I would love just to get them into audiobooks. my aspirations are humble enough where I would just love to get them into audio.
All right. So if Podium or Tantor are listening, give them a call.
A whole trilogy. Do you guys want a whole trilogy? We'll make a deal. Come on. Come talk.
So have you read, this is sort of branching out just a little bit, but have you read the Gateway to the Galaxy series by Jonathan Yanez and J.R. Castle? Because they sort of have that.
No, that sounds cool.
So yeah, it's definitely interesting. I'm starting to see more of the Stargate love coming out, and I'm liking it.
I can't blame them. I mean, it's a wonderful franchise, and they've been so successful over such a long period of time for a reason.
And they've been so mistreated by the directors.
True enough. Yeah. Did you see that they've done a Stargate Origins?
Yeah, but it contradicts because it has the lady that found it, the older woman in the main series. She had never gone through, and that was from the main movie. And then she had never gone through. In fact, they had her fiance go through and get trapped, which became a thing in SG-1. And suddenly now she went, well, the answer is, we just wiped her mind at the end. That's like waking up and it was all a dream. Like, really, that's just cheap.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a little bit.
I'll probably watch it, but
yeah, I watched the first couple episodes. They're short, like web episodes, but they're fun. And I think that's the thing is they were like, we're just going to make something fun to relaunch, access to all of the Stargate franchise. And some people have been upset because it's a little bit off franchise. I'm not so. I'm not such a stickler about like staying on franchise or staying off franchise. I like the side stories, the little different versions. It's like the Lost in Space series that just came back to Netflix.
Yeah.
Like it's just a retelling of it. I think that's great because they could use their own creativity.
I just want to know how it ends with Stargate Universe. I want to know what happens to the Destiny.
Oh man, I'm so sad that they're never going to finish that series.
They did write some comics in some graphic novels. Yeah.
Cool.
Stargate graphic novels. I'll link all of it in the show notes. Because I've read them. I'm waiting for the third one in the SGU to sort of find out what happens. But it's just, it bugs me that they didn't, you know what I mean? Like that, it had so much potential.
It did. It really did. It was a great setup. I mean, just like being on an ancient ship that's kind of alive, it just leads to a lot of interesting different conflicts.
So I could tell you the question.
You're interrupting our
nerd. Go. Yeah, I know, but I have this sciencey question. I must ask.
Hit me. What is it?
Okay. So I did a little bit of research on NASA, and so far there are 927 terrestrial planets discovered. Did you know that?
927. I did not know that.
And that's just in the observable universe that we can see within our own galaxy. What do you think? What do you personally think the chances are that there might be other human-like civilizations out there?
So I think that the chances are really high. However, I was listening to an interview with Michio Kaku yesterday.
Oh yeah, we're trying to get him on the show.
He's awesome. So now we know that there are terrestrial planets out there. And we know that many of them are in the habitable zone of their solar system, what we call the Goldilocks zone. Mm-hmm. And what Michio Kaku said is like 100% there are intelligent civilizations out there. There probably are. However, the odds of us actually encountering them, given that the universe is 16 billion years old and we don't know when their civilization started, the odds that we'll actually interact with them and encounter them is just so infinitesimally small. But there have to be other civilizations out there. If there are other worlds like this, and we were able to overcome the evolutionary constraints. There have to be other civilizations out there. However, because the universe is so large and so old, we don't know like where in the development of their civilization they are. So the odds that they're in the spacefaring age at the same time that we are so small.
Right. Or maybe they became more advanced than us and annihilated themselves with their own technology.
So what?
Yeah, or would we even recognize them as civilizations at this point? Like maybe they're in a form that we wouldn't even recognize as an intelligent being or as a being at all. Maybe they've evolved past us, so we wouldn't even know it when we stumbled upon them.
So what you guys are describing, without naming it, is what they call the Fermi Paradox, which was named after a physicist, Enrico Fermi, which is basically the apparent contradiction between the lack of evidence and the high probability of existence of extraterrestrial life, which I always found fascinating. Now, one answer to that is they've realized that as you send a radio signal into space, it actually degrades. And so the farther it gets from Earth, it actually eventually blends in. I think we've talked about this in one of our science episodes, but it basically starts to blend in with the background noise of space. And so it's possible that they're out there and we're all beaming signals back and forth, but none of them actually meet. So, some little alien, right. So some little alien is sitting there wondering the same thing as, to their little green mom, like, oh, are there other aliens just like us?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. I mean, and we have more evidence now that there are habitable planets out there than we did when Fermi came up with the paradox, right?
We do. And then the other part of that is we based all of our calculations on looking for Goldilocks planets for us. But one of the things we've learned is, one, they found sulfur-based life forms in the Yellowstone Flats. So the idea that it has to be carbon-based is, that's not the only way we know now that life exists. And two, it's just the idea that just because there's life out there doesn't necessarily mean it's sentient. Although, can you imagine the philosophy departments at all, like Harvard and Yale and whatnot, having this discussion? Is this a space cow? Can we eat it, or do we have to, embrace it as a fellow living soul?
It depends.
I
don't know, but you guys can taste it first.
There's a YouTube channel that I like to watch called Generation Tech, where they break down a lot of like sci-fi nerddom. And one of the things they sell is to fund their channel is it's a humanity first. And the idea is basically just kill all the aliens, humanity first. It's hilarious. Technically, it's what I guess xenophobia. I guess would be the word for it. It's hilarious though.
And
it's interesting. Would we even recognize aliens if we encountered them?
Maybe we already have. All right. So one of the questions that got skipped in the confusion of Virgin Galactic kicking us off the interwebs was the we wanted to ask you. Chris was going to ask this question, but I'm stealing it from him because he got a little disjointed. So in your series you've written that there were humans on other planets or human likes. So is that something that you think is possible, that there could be something humanoid out there, or do you think it's just story fodder as far as not just aliens but like the type of aliens?
Yeah, I think it's I don't know. It's good story fodder. I can definitely tell you that. I have no idea if it's real or not, or if it's even close to real. But I think that if there is intelligent life out there, they're going to have some things in common with the type of beings that evolved past their physical limits, right? Like humans have. Like they're going to have if not an opposable thumb, then an opposable tentacle or something to use tools. They're going to have a large brain and they're going to have language. And it's the three things that separate humans from animals and have allowed us to evolve, even though, like, physically speaking, humans are like crappy animals. We have exposed skin that gets infected. We can't stay warm. We can only live in like certain temperature zones.
We can't run that fast. We don't have giant claws.
We can't run that fast. We're not that strong. We're not even that like mentally strong, so there are a lot of things working against humans, but we've managed to evolve beyond the animal confines of this planet and like go to the moon and explore the solar system and that sort of stuff. So my theory is that if we do find other beings, they would be kind of like that, right? Like they would have evolved from past their limitations to reach beyond their planet. They would have to. Like, you would have to evolve some special skill to get beyond, just like beyond your atmosphere, right?
Right.
True. So if they develop this this technology, this translocator, this Stargate, this, you know, whatever you want to call device, would you step through it?
Not first. I probably would. You know, I'm pretty adventurous, but I certainly wouldn't want to be the first one that goes through a molecular reassembly device.
So you'd push Chris in first. Okay.
I might go first.
Yeah, or like, you know, an inanimate object.
He's like, I can't take it anymore. See, Chris works for a school system as a janitor. He tells you he works in IT, but we know he's the janitor. And so he just hates humanity at this point because he deals with your kids. So he would probably like, it's going to kill me. Sure, step in.
Yeah, like if an alien came to our world and the first thing they encountered was the children, they'd be like, these are pouting, dude.
Little germ factories.
Yeah, ugh, these things smell terrible.
Why do they keep these things?
I'm still trying to figure that out, and I got two of my own.
Are they space cows? Are they delicious?
You know, that is something I haven't considered. I'll have to get back with you after I call my good friend Hannibal Lecter up.
No, from the alien's point of view, not from mine.
So as long as we're getting aliens that are like space cows as opposed to like Predator, we're okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I mean, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But I love the idea of encountering life forms that are so different than us. You know, a lot of the aliens that I've put into other stories, not the Translocator books, the one ancient alien in the Translocator book is kind of humanoid. But in other books, I like exploring the ideas of aliens taking on different forms. Like, maybe they're made out of light, or maybe they're made out of, you know, like a sulfur-based life form. That would be really interesting. Well, what would they look like? They come from something other than carbon.
So do you do things with like a hive mind kind of thing, like a bees colony kind of thing, or was it all?
I haven't yet, but I love the idea because it has a basis in reality, right? Like it has, we have animals on Earth who function with a hive mind. So it's conceivable that we would find an alien life form like that. What we don't have on Earth is an alien made out of light particles.
As far as we know.
Like, that's weird, right? As far as we know, that's right. But there's no evidence for it on Earth.
I mean, everybody knows the ancients ascended.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Right after they built the pyramids.
Why else are there pyramids on every continent, JR?
Exactly. So, all right. Did you have any more questions for him about the Translocator series? I know you've actually started reading it, Chris.
No,
This is your chance. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
No, but I still haven't finished reading yet. But I am curious. What would you prefer? Us finding aliens or aliens finding us?
That is a really good question. I'm going to have to go with us finding aliens because I don't like being surprised by alien civilizations. It just doesn't seem like something you want to wake up to and be like, oh, hey, the aliens are here now. Also, like any book that the aliens find us, it starts with the disaster, right? Like, there's no imagined future where the aliens find us that there's not a disaster involved.
Well, they already have. Don't you?
So
don't you know Area 51? Hello.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
do you participate in SETI?
No.
Oh, so you've never heard of Boink? This is the.
I haven't. What is this?
Berkeley Online. I forget what the rest of it stands for. Gerald. Have to look it up. Haha. But basically, it's this little program that you download on your computer, and it runs as a screensaver. And you can choose a bunch of different projects, such as protein folding and searching for new medicines. But one of the things you can do is actually search for aliens. And so, what they do is they grab some data from the Arecibo Radio Observatory and load it on this gigantic server array, and then send it to Berkeley, and Berkeley distributes it to other computers to do most of the processing. And then if anything interesting is found, it gets sent back to Berkeley so they can analyze just the interesting parts and leave everything else out.
Fascinating.
And the rumor is that if you're the one that finds an alien signal, you get to name the aliens.
What are you going to name them?
I'm going to name them turd monsters. So that when they discover us and they discover what I named them, they annihilate us.
See, he's naming them after the kids he works with.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, this is cool. You walk away from your computer, and it searches for aliens while you're away, while you're not using your computer, anyways.
So one of the things we do before we transition to the genre writ large, and then the science and all that, is we like to give you the author a chance to tell us if there's anything else about your universe that you thought was cool that somehow we missed. This is your chance to nerd out over your creation.
Something else about the universe that we did not cover. So one of the things that I've always been interested is how did, if Stargate were real, how did the humans get elsewhere? And that's really the mystery that's kind of behind the Translocator series, is how did they get elsewhere and why are they there in the first place? And also I've always been, so that's one thing. And the other thing is I've always been fascinated with pyramids. I know we mentioned pyramids being on every continent. Why are there pyramids on every continent that are shaped basically the same and that are built in almost the same way?
So there's this theory that you could have two people create the same thing at approximately the same time but have no contact with each other. Yep. Because the idea basically being that there are universal truths. So gravity is real, the sun rises and sets and all of that. And so the fact that you could discover those definite truths at the same time, it just makes sense. And so that's their theory on the pyramids. But I've also seen some of the funny, if you delve deep into the interwebs, you can find all kinds of alien conspiracy theories that are pretty interesting.
Well, so there's a couple theories about the pyramids that I found fascinating. So one of them is that they were like used to control gravitational force. And I find that there's not enough evidence for that to really satisfy my science fiction writer brain, but the one that does satisfy my science fiction writer brain is, you said earlier that like the ancients have ascended to the stars, right? Well, we all know that the continents were once one continent, Pangea, and that all humans came from, there's now genetic evidence that all humans came from Africa. So what if there was an ancient civilization that built pyramids, and then that knowledge was passed down through the thousands and thousands of generations that spread across the world as the continents separated. And so the reason that the same kind of pyramids are on every continent is because the ancient civilization that developed on Pangea created this concept, and then they just took it with them when they emigrated.
Wow.
There's
another book.
And so the other idea is when I mentioned the there's a name for it, but basically where you could develop the same idea without contact at the same time, is you could, in theory, posit that another Earth-like planet could develop a human-like being that would live on it, because you develop in response to, just like military technology, it's a constant back and forth. So, a samurai against, I don't know, a feudal lord, it doesn't work because they have different technology with different skill set, because they evolved along the lines in response to what they faced. And so if the world was similar enough, you would, in theory, be able to see human-like, or at least close enough, species, because they would be responding to the same stimulus in the form of, to the same pressures in the environment. And this is where we try to sound like we're smarter than we are, so don't laugh at us, people.
I think it's a really interesting idea. But, I always feel like it's kind of a roll of the dice that it happened to be humans that evolved from the apes and not some other kind of being. Like, why didn't we evolve from marsupials? They have hands and feet, and also, like, they can carry their young around much easier. So why not marsupials?
That would have been handy.
It's just like a evolutionary roll of the dice, right?
Right. Neat.
All right, well, this is where we'll start transitioning to the more broader genre-based, because his series is listed as First Contact and Galactic Exploration and all the space opera goodness. That's not to say he doesn't have action and adventure. It's just that's how he classified it on Amazon. So, Chris.
Yes.
Hit it.
Hit what?
Well, not Matt. We don't want to hit our guest. This is where you're supposed to ask that question. I tried to set it up for you, transition and smooth and everything. It was supposed to be like butter.
All right. Well, since you write in this genre of first contact, what things do you see in this genre that you like, and what things do you see that you don't like that some authors are doing without naming any books that you don't like specifically? Or do we just not see a lot of these anymore?
I've been reading a lot more lately, and I love the stories. I mean, you can't go wrong with a space exploration story or a first contact story if you do it right. And the thing that always bothers me about if a book bothers me, it's not because it's not because it's unoriginal. It's not because like we've seen giant bugs before, let's not do them again. It's that the authors don't necessarily explore the depth of character, and they just focus on like big alien bad guy, and like that's enough for the story. That's never enough for me in a story. But it seems like the books that I've read in the genre that I don't like are the ones that don't have a lot of character depth or conflict, or they just think big bugs are enough. They try to do the Starship Troopers where it's just like, oh, big bugs, everybody's dying. And like, that's the whole story. And I can never get into it because I don't care about the characters enough. And I see that a lot in the first contact space because they're so fascinated with the aliens that they forget about the characters.
Right. They get this whole picture in their mind of the story they want to tell, but the story is only the critters.
Yeah. Yeah, or it's like, oh, the aliens have come to Earth. We have to go fight them. And the main character's like, I don't want to fight them. Okay, I'm going to fight them. And you're like, that's it?
Ta-da!
Ta-da? You just like, there's no struggle, no conflict, no like resistance to the idea that you have to go into outer space and fight aliens. It's just like, okay, let's go. Get on the ship, Johnny. Good luck.
Okay. Rico was the man. That's all I've got to say. All right. So following that, what do you think are the best types of space exploration vehicles in science fiction? Obviously, you'd give yourself top billing. So who would your second pick be?
For a book, my favorite ones are usually the immediacy, like any vehicle that has an immediate aspect to it. Like I'm a big fan of ship-based stories like Firefly, where they're on the ship most of the time, or Stargate Universe, which we've talked about. They're like stuck on the ship. So I love those kind of vehicles, like the ancient spacecraft or generational spacecraft. I think those are really fascinating to me.
The colony ships?
Yeah,
I love
colony
that.
ships are such a cool way to set up a story. And it's like a controlled environment. So I love that. There are a lot of different ways that we could imagine spacecraft that people haven't explored a lot. Like, I don't think people have really explored solar sails in detail or some of the different kinds of, and a lot of the stuff in science fiction is kind of hand wavy. You just like use some buzzwords to explain away your engine system and it's just, you just go. They don't really think about it too much. But I really love the colony ship idea. That's one thing that I've played around with a lot, but haven't really fully explored because it would have to be like a whole separate universe from the stuff that I've written now.
Yeah, well, that's another good idea. I want to write one too.
Mm-hmm. It's fun.
So what, if you were naming a colony ship, sorry, I had to take a cough drop up, man. My kids, the germ factories, man, they're trying to murder me. But if you were naming a colony ship, what would you think of a cool name? I'm gonna put you on the spot because I love naming ships. Like that's the fun. Like, I could spend hours just coming up with spaceship names.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I haven't really thought about what a good name for it would be. The Alpha and the Omega.
Sure, twin colony ships. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of my names are taken from like ancient pantheon inspiration. So like, is there a Greek god for like good luck? Like the Hermes? That would be a fun one.
That would be, yeah.
That'd be cool. So what about you, Chris?
Name for colony ship?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, well,
I think I would name it the J.R. Handley and then blow it up. Yeah, I think that'd work.
Know.
Or just drive into a sun, or only part of it. Everybody gets sucked out of the other half. Something like that.
Didn't they drive the colony ship in Universe into a sun? Or am I imagining that?
I haven't read that far. I'm on book 5, so I don't remember that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I meant in Stargate Universe. I think they used. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant Galaxy's Edge because they have the.
Oh no,
Okay.
no, I haven't. I haven't read that far either. I think I'm only a few books in. But on Stargate
so am I.
Universe, they, I'm pretty sure so this is like this ancient mothership that the aliens built, and they're like, how do we charge this thing? It's running out of energy, and basically they just ended up turning it into a sun. And they were like, it just charged in the star.
They did that with the Destiny. That's how it recharged it. It scooped up, on SGU.
I love that idea because if you're traveling through the solar system and it's a one-way ticket, you have like fusion reactors just like dotting the way. It's like you're driving a Tesla across the U.S. except it's much bigger.
Right.
And Elon Musk didn't come with you.
Yeah. Elon Musk
but the Starman will.
already set up the charging stations. They're called stars.
So, if I was going to name it, I don't know. I would probably go with. I was going to say something witty, and I just forgot.
Ta-da!
So this is where we'll pause it. We'll insert something witty, and we'll start again. Like I said, something hilarious. So I did like Destiny. That was a good name for a ship.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could do the Santa Maria. Although that might be too Anglo-centric.
Also, you're going to kill everybody when you arrive, huh?
Well, I can't. Those diseases aren't going to spread themselves.
But
all right. Well,
so
enough about your books, Matt. Shameless plugging is over. What are you reading in this genre?
What am I reading? Well, Terra Nova by Richard Fox. Reading that one right now. I also just did a reread of Ursula K. Le Guin's The Word for World is Forest. It's her award-winning novella from, I don't remember, the 60s or 70s, that supposedly, some people say, George Lucas stole the idea from the Ewoks from her.
Oh.
That's a great book. The Word for World is Forest. And what else did I read recently? Read some Galaxy's Edge books. Those ones were good. Nnedi Okorafor's Binti was really fun. I like the first one a lot. They're these also award-winning novellas, but they're short. They're like 30,000 words. Okay, I'll give you one more. I've really been into this sci-fi mystery subgenre where it's like there's a detective of some kind, or like a private eye. It's a little different between each different story. But John Scalzi has one called The Dispatcher. That's like a sci-fi mystery novella. And Brandon Sanderson, the epic fantasy writer, also has a sci-fi mystery novella called Snapshot. That one is awesome. So it's basically sci-fi mystery, and the conceit in Snapshot is that they can recreate a day in this city, and they can enter the city in that day to investigate the crime that happened.
Oh, that's clever.
Super cool. So it's all like modern day, except for this one twist. So it's like a detective noir, except with one sci-fi twist. So like you can enter a day in the city and re-experience it and investigate what happened. And John Scalzi's Dispatcher, the twist is that murdered people come back to life. So anytime somebody dies, they appear naked as the day they were born in their bed at home.
Wow.
And so that's a really interesting one too. But it's the same thing. It's like this. I love this subgenre of science fiction. It's the detective noir with like one sci-fi twist that just makes it really interesting. So that's kind of the stuff I've been reading lately.
Didn't The Expanse do something like that in the beginning?
They may have, yeah. And the other one that's kind of done it like sci-fi noir with a like noir detective with a sci-fi twist is Altered Carbon, which was made into a Netflix series. Right. And that one they have they've elongated human life so that they could jump between bodies. And the thing that's like the sci-fi twist is like it's in the future, like Blade Runner's in the future in a futuristic city, but the twist is that the people in this universe can download their consciousness into other bodies. And so when they're tired of this body, they just grow a new one or hop into that person's body. They just have like a room full of bodies that they can jump around in. It's really weird.
See all kinds of things going wrong.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a book series that they made into a Netflix TV show. That was pretty good. Gratuitously violent at times, but it was very entertaining. All
right, Shunch. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. My son walked in. His patience is at a, 9-year-olds and hungry don't go well together. Mm-hmm. But give me Sorry.
Well, you got to go feed them before they eat you. So.
Well, my wife is downstairs to feed him. He likes talking to Chris because they have this banter going back and forth. So he was looking for an excuse. So Chris tells him he sounds like an old man.
I'm not old.
Sorry about that, people. Sorry about that. But it'd be too much of a pain in the butt to try to edit that out. So we're just going to rock and roll with it. That's what happens when you have kids, people. All right. So those are all a lot of interesting books. So I've read. Or I own Terra Nova. I've got to read it now that I might have died in it. The word for world is forest. I've heard about it, but I haven't read it. I'll have to see if I can track down where to even buy that. And I'm definitely intrigued that Sanderson actually wrote sci-fi. I didn't think he had it in him.
Yeah, you know what's cool about that is that I think he was like, I need a palate cleanser between 500,000 word fantasy books. He just sat down in a weekend and wrote a sci-fi novella, and then he indie published it, which I thought was really cool.
That is cool. So most people, they write as many words as he does, and it's like a trilogy or
right.
several book series. He's like, I'll call this book one.
Yep, exactly. Him and Patrick Rothfuss have a book length problem.
Yeah. So
you need to sit them down and be like, this is the therapy group for people who write too long.
Yes. So I actually would have that problem if I didn't restrain myself, but I also know you got a right to market as far as what the genre expects, and nobody wants like a 1,000,000-word military sci-fi. I mean, I guess they do.
True.
They call it the Honor Harrington series, and there's like 13 books. But anyway,
the expense.
Right. So we'll transition now into the science part of the sci-fi genre that we love. So are there any breakthroughs that you're excited about?
Any what?
Any scientific developments you're excited about?
So there's a couple things. One, they did this incredible genetic study of indigenous Australians, and they've kind of traced back the genes to like where they branched off of the family tree in Africa. That was incredible. These genetic studies are going to reveal a whole lot about human history that we did not know. So that's really interesting to me.
Cool.
Okay.
What else?
And the other one that has caught my attention, and this kind of relates to the Translocator series, because I'm fascinated by ancient cultures and how we keep learning more about them. Like when we rediscovered the Mayan ruins only a couple hundred years ago, every year since then, we've learned so much more about them, and our perspective on them has changed. And also, like, I think that the more we learn about them, the more we learn how incredible they were, how intelligent and how evolved their civilization was. So recently, they've developed a new technique to map the forests in Guatemala. And they've realized that basically this valley in Guatemala that's now covered in forest used to be covered in roads and stone cities. They basically turned the entire valley in Guatemala into a giant farm by damming it at both ends and irrigating it.
Interesting.
So they've there's this TV series now. I forget what it's called. I can send you a link for the show notes, but you can watch this TV show where they do this new mapping technique. So these guys are like stomping through the jungle, and they're going to visit these ruins. And the locals there, they have a local with them, a guy who's been exploring the ruins all his life. And after they mapped this, he was like, "Oh my God, I didn't even know those were there." And this guy's been exploring this jungle for 20 years, right? And so they did this map, and it looks like when you do this mapping technique that the Mayan civilization just spread from coast to coast in Guatemala. It was insane. And it's so much bigger than any archaeologist ever predicted. So that sort of stuff is amazing to me because we're like finding new civilizations on our world that have always been there or were there and are now gone that we didn't even know about. That's incredible.
So my uncle is actually from Guatemala, so I keep bugging him to take me so we could go tour for research.
Absolutely.
He told me he's waiting for Chris and I to strike it rich, so that way we can write it off as a tax expense, and then he doesn't have to pay for it. He's like, no, you'll pay for it. It'll be research. Because his family still lives there. So it's definitely on my list. I saw that article when it came out about them. I think it had to do with like laser signals or something for that article.
Yeah, there's some new mapping technique. I don't know what it is, but
right. And so
like
it was pretty interesting. It was way above my head as far as trying to understand the technology. I don't necessarily have to understand why a gun works. I don't need to know how a combustion engine works. I just know that they do. Right. So this is one of those ones where I just hit the I believe button.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah. Anything else that you're excited by before I ask Chris to drool over Elon Musk again?
No, I want to hear what you guys are interested in.
So yeah, Elon Musk. I don't know if it's common knowledge, but it seems to be. He is quite worried that AI research will eventually lead to an immortal dictator. Right, and this guy, along with the late Stephen Hawking's, predicted that if we continue on this path, eventually we're going to reach something called the singularity, where an AI not only becomes self-aware, understanding that it actually exists, but considers itself alive, and then considers what it can do to remain alive and who's its biggest threat except human beings. So it'll either destroy us or use us to further protect itself and propagate. I cannot find a lot of fault with his ideas. Just like in the Jurassic Park movie, you can set up precautions, but nature, even if you create artificial nature, will find a way. So that was my story. That was on space.com.
Yes, it will.
I love that website. I browse there all the time. So do you have any thoughts on Elon Musk? Are you a fanboy too?
I'm a big fan of what Elon Musk is doing. It's hard to find fault with his theories since I can't prove one way or another whether he's right about the singularity or AI or any of the stuff. Like, we live in like a robot's dream, basically.
Right.
All the other stuff that he said. He's right. Like, it's possible. It's scary. And I think it's something we should be aware of, especially if the more and more research we do in AI, the less and less we understand about how it really works, I feel like. We're just like setting up systems and saying go. And one day we're going to set up a system and say go, and it's going to turn on you.
Okay. So do you follow Elon Musk as well then? Or
Speaking of Elon Musk, did you know that they're building another Hyperloop test track now?
I don't even know what that is.
The Hyperloop? Really?
Yeah.
So he basically, I forget how long ago it was. It was a couple of years now. He came up with this idea of a train that moves through a tube, and it's like suspended in the tube, so there's no friction. I think it's like maglev tubes, basically.
Okay.
At high speed, so that these trains would go between, I think his original idea was San Francisco to LA in 30 minutes. So once he released this idea, then he open sourced the plans. He was like, hey, world, I don't have enough time to do this because I'm running 3 companies. So here's the idea. And he gave it to people. And then they ran a contest based on the idea, and several companies were formed. So the cool thing about the Hyperloop is that Elon doesn't own the idea anymore because he released it to the world. You can go find the plans and his theories on it, the white paper basically. And then several other companies were formed. So there's a test track they're building in Texas. And I think Elon's Hyperloop, they're just building, what did he say, in the Nevada desert or something like that. I forget what the article said, but they're basically finding empty parts of the US where they can build these giant test tracks to see if they can build one of these things. And also Elon has built a tunnel in LA where you drive a car in and it lowers the car in an elevator, and then you go in the tunnel outside of LA.
Wow.
So I actually used that concept for the maglevs I inserted in my Sleeping Legion series.
Nice.
Starting from, I think, was it book 2? We mentioned them. But yeah, I actually was fascinated by that. Basically, it's like, Chris, it's like magnets hold it up, and it works in a closed tube, and so it's like a bullet shooting down a track. And it actually, the only limitation is the human body, because if you're putting cargo in it, it's capable of going way faster than the human body can take. But obviously, if you put it at its highest speeds with a human in there, they're going to be jelly at the end, literally, not metaphysically, literally they would be crushed by the pressure.
Wow.
Yeah. 20 years ago, this idea would have been science fiction, right? The fact that we could have a high-speed rail connecting every major city in the U.S., science fiction. That's something that William Gibson would have wrote in a cyberpunk book, or it would have been in a dystopian novel or something. And actually, I think Arthur C. Clarke used this idea in one of his books that I read recently as well. I forget which one, but anyways, this used to be sci-fi, and now it's reality. They're actually building these things.
So the when the trains came out, 1800s, when they became more common, when the Iron Horse, whatever, early 1900s, they actually thought at one point in time that the human body couldn't go on a train because it was going 40 miles an hour. Right.
That your blood would stop circulating.
Right. So I wonder if we're going to find out 20 years from now or 100 years from now, they're laughing at us. They're like, oh, they thought the human body couldn't go at that speed.
What's 1,000 kilometers an hour? Come on.
Wow. So I'm curious to see, you know, when they obviously they haven't really tested it. It's all been theoretical until recently. I mean, they've had some test tracks, but they were not built to scale. So now that they've got it to scale and they have the technology, they use it a lot for like pressure testing in the military, because I've seen them where they'll have like these gel forms that are full of sensors, like basically test dummies. And so they could actually put a human analog test dummy in there and get enough readings, and they'll be able to know like what it would do to the human body. So they'll be able to definitively answer it.
It's amazing.
Which would be nice before you're the first one in it and be like, oops.
It sounds like launching people out of a railgun.
I mean, that's not that far from how they work. I mean,
they're basically just giant railguns.
Wow. So it'll be curious about max speed, and then that's, you know, opens a whole new realm for terrorism. It's like, give us all of whatever our demands are, or we'll turn it up faster.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. But imagine, I mean, like the thing about the U.S. right now is that it's so much land. Like I live in Austin, Texas, and it's 4 hours from Austin to Dallas, and you're still in the frickin' state of Texas.
Right.
So just being able to connect the major cities and to move around easier would change the economy. It would change the U.S. dramatically.
Yeah, definitely it would. So remember, I'm trying to think of it. There was a movie back in the day that like it was set on a bus, and like the whole point was if you stop or you slow down, we'll like blow it up, and it was like they were basically holding them hostage. I want to say Sandra Bullock was in it. I'm drawing a blank. No, you guys got nothing for me.
I got nothing. No.
Speed, was that it?
Yeah,
I think that might have been it. Yeah, with Keanu Reeves. Yeah, that's it. It's Speed. But so anyway, you could basically recreate that in real life once you get these bullet trains if someone wanted to.
Yeah. Fortunately, it's San Francisco to LA in 30 minutes, so it won't last that long. Definitely not the length of a movie.
The length of a single episode of a miniseries.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Unless the rest of the movie was just them cleaning up the blood and gore. And
Right.
So, speaking of, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to ask, what do you follow on JR?
So NASA just launched the TESS satellite, TESS, which is basically replacing the Hubble telescope as far as its mission. So it's basically to bravely seek out new alien worlds so we can eat them. But it was launched. It was launched recently, and everything went according to plan. This is from the article on space.com. And from the article, the TESS will hunt for alien worlds around stars in the sun's neighborhood, planets that other missions can then study in detail. And the spacecraft will be incredibly prolific if all goes according to plan. Basically, they're hunting ET. This is my interpretation for it. They're basically hunting for ET, and I'm ready to meet their alien leaders. I want to be the one that says, "Take me to your leader." I mean, that would be kind of cool. And so there is the space.com article about it. And then just to give you a second source, because it was kind of cool, I found it. There's an MSN article about it as well on their tech section. And we'll link those both in the show notes, which I just thought it was super cool because, you know, ET might finally phone home, or us, one of the two.
ET might use you as a phone. I mean, who knows?
This is true, although I hadn't thought of it that way. That's very meta of you. Thank you. So, all right. Well,
sleep on that.
Well, we've been talking for a lot longer than we thought we would because Chris and his nerdness. It's all his fault. So how can listeners find you, Matt? And obviously this is all going to be in the show notes, so.
Yeah. So the best place is to go to mgherron.com. It's mgherron.com. And you can find all my books and links to me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc. on there.
All right. And when was the book 3 in the trilogy coming out again?
So June 1st is when the Ares Initiative comes out. That's the third book in the Translocator series.
And so
June 1st.
I hope you're prepared to have tons of kids because at some point in the 23rd century, your ancestor with your name is going to invent FTL. So you heard it here first, people. All right. What about us? What about
building my legacy?
That's right. You got to start that legacy now. Tell your wife the humanity needs you. But
humanity.
that's called romance, people. So what about us? Where can they find us?
Our website is www.sfshenanigans.com. And also on the website, we have a new swag section if you want to support the show. Our Twitter handle is at SFS, that's Sierra Foxtrot Sierra _show. Our email is podcast@sfshenanigans.com. And now we have a Facebook page. Just look up Sci-Fi Shenanigans.
Its official title is Listeners of the Sci-Fi Shenanigans Podcast. But if you type in shenanigans, I think we're actually the only one that pops up.
Yeah.
For now. So, all right, people, you heard it here first. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Chris Winder, I'm J.R. Handley, and this was the Sci-Fi Shenanigans Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of space and all things that go boom.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that archived episode that was in the digital memory hole that we found. We thought you'd enjoy it. So thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the archive for the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back at our regular scheduled time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom.